You know, we're often really negative here on the MangaKamen channel, but it's not like I'm always negative. It's just that YouTube essentially trained its creators to be negative because that's what sells views on YouTube. Unless you're extremely lucky and you can make whatever you want, it's what's going to get people to click on your videos. Regardless, as I do not want to be negative all the time, I figured we'd be positive and talk about how to do redemption stories in media. And that being said, let's talk about Digimon. Digimon's always been this weird zeitgeist in pop culture. I'm sure I'm going to get a few people who won't be paying attention to what I say, but I recall growing up that Digimon was a Pokemon ripoff. That's not me saying it is, it's me saying that's what I heard growing up.
We'll see who cancels who.
Digimon's always been in the shadow of Pokemon, and in a sense it's the polar opposite to that of Pokemon's design philosophy, despite their similarities. This is because Digimon tends to be a bit more focused on experimentation with their games and animation. Can't really say much about the card game, because I don't play the Digimon card game, sue me. On the game side of things, Digimon games tend to be a bit more experimental and are willing to do different things. And the anime actually does change things up for better or worse. At least it's willing to do different things and change up the protagonist instead of keeping the same protag the same age for over 20 years. So today we're going to be talking about Digimon Tamers, the third season, and talking about probably the best character in the show that represents redemption, Impmon. But before we begin, we need to explain what this series is about, cause, well, this anime came out about 20 years ago, and I know for a fact that some of my audience didn't even exist back then. So hey, if you want to get straight to the video, thank you for chapters. How long until Susan takes those away? In Digimon Tamers, the franchise Digimon is just that, it's a franchise. Unlike the two seasons before where kids went directly into the digital world to survive and solve problems, Tamers takes place in a more grounded world where Digimon is just a fun card game that people play. It isn't until Digimon actually begins showing up in the real world and cause problems. We follow Takado, Rika, and Henry as they gain Digimon partners, Guilmon, Renamon, and Terriamon respectively, as they fight incoming Digimon, as well as deal with interpersonal relationships, as well as dealing with the responsibility of taking care of these dangerous creatures. Obviously, as you can imagine, the cast grows and eventually things escalate to the point where the group has to travel to the digital world. Also, you may have noticed I'm using the English dub for this, not only because do I think the dub is actually rather competently done, it's also the one I'm most familiar with, and besides, who doesn't want to hear Cowboy Bebop fame Steve Bloom's melodic voice? Ah, the voice of an angel.
You didn't need to post that.
Eventually, around episode 6, we're introduced to the character that this video is about, Impmon.
If they don't change, they're gonna pay, cause Impmon's plan is underway.
Now, if that voice sounds familiar, that's Derek Stephen Prince. He's voiced a few other characters in the Digimon franchise like Demi Devimon and Ken Ichijo, but he's also the voice behind Uryu from Bleach, Iggy in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, or the character I recognize him as, the worst character in Power Rangers ever, Algar. We're first introduced to Impmon. He's not really that much of a threat. If anything, he acts more like a devil-on-the-shoulder character, where he proposes a question to the tame Digimon of the main cast.
Take it from me, Toots. You gotta quit being stupid to really be free. Get away from that human immediately!
I honestly can't tell if he's trying to hit on Renamon or trying to make her question herself, maybe a combination of the two. Regardless, it's not very effective, but Impmon continues with this sort of thing, going after probably the dumbest of the tame Digimon at the time, Guilmon. Again, we're establishing that the character is a troublemaker, and really to be more clear, a bit more on the comedic relief side of things as well. But you may be wondering, why is Impmon like this, and what is his motivation? Well, Impmon actually had a couple of tamers, a pair of younger kids who essentially treat him like a toy. It's heavily implied that this was a constant occurrence, and having seen the two rep a Baron 2, he ran away. Now here's something else to consider that is established in the series. Digimon want to become stronger. It's literally coded to them since, well, they're digital monsters. It's something that was established with the other tamer Digimon. This is something that the writer of the series was going for. Konika Chiaki actually says this: Impmon is a Digimon who wants to become powerful. This is a natural urge in Digimon. However, Impmon is still childish in many ways, and he did not have a happy relationship with his partners. The strength that Impmon longs for is as a result, a very dangerous thing. It also behooved me to point out that Chiaki was also the head writer for the 2001 anime Hellsing. Just felt I should put that out there for you all to know who exactly we're dealing with here. It wasn't until an encounter with Indramon that really started to shake him up. Impmon isn't strong, and up to this point in the series, the other Digimon who were tamed were able to become stronger and evolve, and getting thoroughly thrashed by a horse-faced jackass is enough to really make Impmon realize how weak he was, especially in comparison to the tamed Digimon who were able to beat the enemy that thrashed him.
Ooh, that tickles.
So we've got this basis for the character down, and you've got a troublemaker for a character who's at the bottom, ego bruised, pride swallowed. Where do you go from here? Why, you extend him a deal. What happens next requires little context, because long story short, the main cast needs to go to the digital world to save a kidnapped Digimon, Kalumon, and during this adventure, Impmon makes a deal with one of the antagonists of the series up to this point. This deal allows Impmon to evolve directly into his mega form, Beelzemon. Honestly, Beelzemon's design is so edgy and dark, and I gotta say, I love it. The demonic biker aesthetic is pretty wicked, not gonna lie. Of course, Beelzemon had to pay a price for this power, to kill the Tamers and their Digimon. This does eventually lead to a confrontation between Beelzemon and the Tamers, a fight of life and death. And unfortunately, there is a casualty. Now, to a lot of you who aren't familiar with this show, this is probably coming off a bit Red Shirt-like. So to explain, this is Leomon, a Digimon partner who's been with the group for at least a few episodes and formed a connection with another character, Jerry. And this death does rock her to the core. Now, killing someone is probably one of the worst things a character can do, especially if said character has a connection that's pretty blatant to another character. And as such, it carries a heavy weight on the character who did the killing. And it should have an impact, otherwise any future redemption will come off as hollow.
That's what you get.
I wonder how that Star Wars clip got there. Now, it doesn't have to be instant regret, especially when it's during a fight. It's for more future events. And to go over a fight so we can get to the juicy bits of the story, eventually Beelzemon is defeated and about to be killed. However, it's not forgiveness that saves him. It's clear by the dialogue that Jerry doesn't forgive Beelzemon for his actions. Just too much blood being spilled and not wanting there to be more. It's not even done out of compassion, but it's enough to actually begin the turns of redemption.
Strongest around. I'm the live like a cheese of Digimon!
Redemption is a tricky thing to write, especially nowadays. A lot of media will often ignore the terrible things that a lot of characters have done just because they have a change of heart or change of ideology. But that's not what true redemption is. It doesn't work like that in the real world, and it shouldn't work like that in fiction, especially when you have a character who has done multiple horrible things. Even more so if it's done for selfish or egotistical reasons. Otherwise, if a character is automatically forgiven simply because they show remorse or are only doing a side change for their own self-preservation, it makes redemption arcs seem really hollow. And don't get me wrong, if you want to change sides to make sure you don't get killed, I can understand that, but that doesn't mean you're a changed person, nor does it negate all the bad things you've done. It just means your about face is cheap and hollow. So does Impmon fall into this trapping? In my opinion,
No, not really.
because even though he was spared by Jerry, there was a lot of animosity towards the little guy, to the point where some of them wanted to leave Impmon halfway dead in the digital world. And you can also tell that Impmon himself believes that he doesn't deserve to be here, not after what he's done. This is something that a lot of redemption stories need to do at some point, to show that the actions that the character has taken have weighed on their minds and souls, especially if it's something as heavy as taking the life of another character. The action shouldn't just disappear, and said action should weigh heavily on a character because, well, it makes the character human, even if they're a digital monster. And when you make a character human, you allow the audience to sympathize with the character. Granted, I'm sure most of us haven't killed half-man, half-lion digital monsters whose death has become a joke in the entire series before, but we can see Impmon reflecting on his terrible actions and being confused as to why he was even saved by the cast. And as such, Impmon in his lowered state decides to try to find his human partners, having been browbeaten and learning from what his quest of power cost him. And he does find them and learns that the two kids who fought over him changed to make sure they wouldn't lose him again. It is a small lesson, but it shows that anyone can change for the better, and it's a lesson that Impmon does take to heart as we see in the scenes afterwards. Because the little guy decides to help the main cast fight against a giant living program called the D-Reaper that's about to delete the entire world. Yeah, sorry, missing out on some context here, but whatever. It's a step that's being taken to redemption, and hey, when he shows up, he is berated by some of the group, but he doesn't care. He wants to help whether or not they believe in him, and even though he does help the Tamers, Impmon isn't redeemed, not even in his eyes. Because the biggest sin is still on his shoulders, taking the life of Leomon and essentially causing a lot of psychological pain to Jerry, to the point where she's being used by the D-Reaper. And it's something that Impmon knows that he can't be forgiven for, and he's not looking to be forgiven, just to make things right.
What I did is beyond forgiveness. I don't need anyone to tell me that. No matter what I do, I can't change the past. But what I can do is save Jerry!
This is a line that holds a lot of strength in my opinion with this, and it really demonstrates that Impmon isn't doing this for his own selfish reasons, rather because it's the right thing to do, and to at least help those who he wronged in the past. And eventually, even when Beelzemon has the ability to save Jerry, she shuns him. I find that to be really realistic, especially since the last time the two met, Impmon had killed Leomon and almost everyone that Jerry knew. So eventually, once the threat is done, Jerry does forgive Impmon, and it feels earned because we're able to see the journey being taken as well as the anguish that Impmon goes through as well as what he does to earn that forgiveness, something that a lot of stories lack nowadays.
You guys may be armed, but I got something really special up my sleeve.
Get what you fucking deserve!
I'm not going to pretend that this is the greatest writing of all time. We're talking about an anime show from 20 years ago that was made to sell products to kids. And while it doesn't stop anything from being good or bad, I prefer to think that this character, along with the redemption arc he goes through, is good. And you may be asking, well, for one thing, it's pacing. Now, I've essentially given you an abridged version of the events of the show and had to cut a lot of context, mainly because I don't want my editor to find me and strangle me in my sleep for having to go through an entire 51-episode series. And knowing him, he's probably roasting me as I speak.
You know, originally I wasn't gonna say anything until you brought it up, but how do you say confrontation as
Confrontation.
and when you say browbeaten, it sounds like you're saying brown beaten. Like, is this like a Chris Brown joke I'm missing out on? Okay, you know, it's like Rihanna. Anybody remember that?
But when I talk about pacing with this arc, it's that we're able to follow Impmon's origins. We learn about his motivations, we see his rise to power, his fall from grace, and what he does to try to build himself back up. It's not like it happens in the course of an episode. There's a consistent time frame being taken to actually flesh out the character's redemption, and even when there's pushback from various characters because of his actions, we get to see that. I don't know. Yes, the writing is simple, but you don't need to be complex in order to be good, nor do you need to be complex to touch someone's heart and influence them. And that, to me, is why I think Impmon's tragic redemption is good and that a lot of people can learn from it. There's a reason why a lot of people love the little guy, and I can't really blame them. Whether or not you agree, well, whatever. Still a video topic that was fun to talk about. I'm MangaKamen, and thanks for watching.